Well, there's a headline message for livestock farmers here in New Zealand that if our Climate Change Commission's recommendations are to be adopted, they'll see a reduction in net methane emissions from the agricultural sector from 2018 levels by 13% to 2030, a further 7% to 2035, and another 4% to 2050. Deer farmers are going to be looking to implement some novel intervention if they will achieve climate change emission reduction targets such as this. However, there is a lot of work that has been underway in the deer industry for quite some time in this space. But how do deer farmers in New Zealand produce more from less? They are only one of the many red meat sector groups that are certainly trying to achieve that. Joining us now to discuss the future on farm and our farming systems around deer is Deer Farmers Association Executive Committee member Mark McCoord and Deer Industry New Zealand's Environment Project Manager Phil McKenzie. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time to come on Sarah's Country today.
Thanks, Sarah.
Now, Mark, I understand that you have a role to play in Hawaka Eke and Noa, the primary industries group that talks with the climate minister and works through these recommendations. What's it been like in your advisory role, and what are you hearing?
We're only partway through the process, but at this stage, I'm one of a number of people from the farming industry or deer farmers that are working with the government panel, attempting to get workable solutions for the deer industry, as all other livestock classes are too. Probably a lot of what is being discussed is quite broad and relevant to the other industries as well. But that is probably the key thing from a deer farmer's point of view. We need tools in the toolbox to help meet the emissions that have been stated to we're attempting to achieve.
Phil, I mean, the challenge here, it will be, of course, for all livestock farmers in New Zealand to be able to produce more from less. For those who aren't familiar with how deer farming operates in a New Zealand environment, could you give us a bit more context from a farm management perspective?
Yeah, so deer operate across all the land systems that we've got in the country, so and often integrated with sheep, beef and deer, so it's very much a combined approach. There are extensive deer systems. Generally, they are more lightly stocked and more widely spread, in amongst often a lot of woody vegetation and bush. So that is the opportunity to offset that would be really advantageous. But other than that, very similar approach to the other industries, and it's been a really good demonstration of the power of the Hawaka Eke and Noa partnership, that we've been able to get together as industries and talk about these things together and how we're approaching them and what tools we can use and the approaches that will win the day for us.
Mark, when it comes to wider connected ecosystem challenges that we have, freshwater management, for example, and tying in with, of course, our climate change emission targets, there's a lot of pressure on deer farmers at the moment, but this isn't new to the deer industry. How are deer farmers, been implementing good, positive environmental on-farm management?
Well, good farm or environmental management hasn't been a new thing for the deer industry. They've been very, very proactive in this area for a long time, probably since its inception. And they brought out a land care manual a number of years ago. That's since been replaced by an environmental stewardship manual. So they have been very proactive in ensuring, good on-farm stewardship. So they are continually moving that area. It's not something that's just a recent undertaking. So you've got the riparian plantings, waterway fencing, and probably more key, because deer farming is integrated, as Phil said earlier, with other livestock classes. It gives you the opportunity to have the right animal at the right place at the right time when implemented with the other classes of stock. So that is quite an important tool as well.
I was actually driving past a mob of deer the other day, Phil, and I pointed out that they were all very grey looking, and because of the nature of deer deer as an animal wallowing in mud. How do, as Mark just said, you do have the right animal for the right paddocks and that wider management system with sheep and beef when there is those different sort of animal behaviour ways that deer can affect the environment?
Yeah, I think wallowing is a natural behaviour for deer, and you can't always dictate where they're going to wallow. But one of the powers I've seen of deer farmers working together in small groups, like an environment group or an advanced party, is that generally someone in the group will have had an example where they've been able to shift a wallow from close to a sensitive waterway or connected to a waterway into the middle of a paddock where the deer can wallow happily and they're not causing any harm to the environment. So just being able to see those examples and learn the tips and tricks that others have already applied is really valuable, and for farmers to gain that understanding and awareness that these are the things we can do and they will really have an effect is quite powerful. And to see practical examples, there's nothing like seeing how another farmer's approached it to know that that's what I could do on my farm. So yeah, those are really, really strong examples.
Mark, highlighting on the advanced parties, there is the Passion to Profit initiative that's been underway for some time. What have you seen come out of these action groups and this peer-to-peer learning amongst deer farmers?
It's very, very much farmers learning from farmers, and it's in the early stages, it really dragged on-farm performance up from production, just simply by changing some management practices. So it's been really, really valuable because obviously farmers learn from other farmers more readily than probably any other source. And more in recent times, it seems to have evolved away from that focus and more into some of the areas that Phil just touched on with the environment and on-farm practices that can be done in mitigating and sort of meeting the standards that are required in that area. But it just comes back to the same base thing, that farmers learning from farmers and seeing practical examples that they can use is by far being the most the fastest way of getting the message across. Print obviously is valuable for some, but yeah, those practical examples are invaluable.
Phil, what's the feedback from farmers on how to navigate all of this uncertainty and change at the moment? What are they telling you?
Well, farmers are human like everyone else, so you get the whole range of points around the discussion, and you have to sort of tease out everyone's ideas and let people have a bit of a vent if they need to for a while. And then often it gets down to the practical examples of what are we going to do about it. So I just find that conversations, and when you can have them in a focused way, really help people to move to navigate change. And change has been the one constant of farming through the years, since forever. So it's not that farmers don't know how to change. They have changed systems a lot over the years. They will change. They know how to do it. They often just need to know the why. Why are we having to do this rather than you must do this. So once they understand the why, like the rest of us, they will figure out a solution to how to make that happen.
Mark, we've heard from Rhys Griffiths and, of course, Nicola Johnston earlier on our markets and our market access to support that why. But a lot of the times it comes down to the how when, those profit margins aren't there to be able to put that back on farm. Could you paint for us a bit of a picture of what it's been like over the last 12 months with such a slide, and particularly in venison prices, for progress environmentally to continue?
Yeah, it has been a very, very challenging year, particularly for the venison industry. The whole market got turned on its head through COVID, where the restaurant and hospitality trade just dried up overnight, which was the main market for venison. So there's had to be a fast repositioning, and that's still in play. So hopefully will sort of insulate us well into the future. But from a velvet perspective, that's is held well. I think the immune stimulating properties of velvet in the markets in Asia are still highly regarded. So it's been less affected, but it has still had an impact with higher transportation costs. And so it has still been affected, but in a lot less way. It's like anything, for environmental change to happen, it requires time. Time to change, and it requires financial support to change. And if your operating margins on farm are getting squeezed, which is particularly the case for venison farmers, then you've got to pay the bills first, and to survive on farm before you can instigate some of the change that is looking to be achieved. So profitable businesses can instigate environmental change far more successfully than the ones that aren't.
And Phil, in your role with Deer Industry New Zealand and that conversation that you're having at a government level around these particular policies, do you believe this current government understand the challenges of achieving exactly what Mark just said?
Yeah, no, I think they do understand them, and actually a plug for the programs like the Passion to Profit program. That is a really strong partnership with NPI and the government. And, there are a lot of things that get covered in that program that are of real value to New Zealand as well as to farmers. And I think that's recognised. And I think the government appreciates that there are challenges, and they appreciate that farmers need time to do it, but there are things that need to change. So mechanisms that help us all understand that are really quite valuable. But yes, I think they do understand farming.
Mark, what's the messages you're getting from your association members, your deer farmers, around how they are feeling in terms of the rhetoric that's coming out of government, the rate of change that is expected of them all at once with so many different policy updates? I mean, it's a very overwhelming time for them.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I think you've pretty well covered it there. It's not so much the change. The change is a constant, but it's the rate of change and the amount of change in so many areas that are quite overwhelming. A lot of people that have entered into the farming careers, particularly the ones that are at the older end of the spectrum, the skill sets and challenges that they're now facing are not what they started farming for. But they've evolved over a number of years and met those requirements, but it's the rate of change is what's doing the most damage. And as I mentioned before, you've got to be financially profitable in order to be able to meet some of the requirements that have been asked of us. And first and foremost, if we're not profitable, it's going to be very difficult.
Phil, how are you feeling about the year ahead and how far we've come and how far we've got to go?
I'm feeling really positive about the year ahead because I think there is we've got vaccine rolling out now. I think September, October, the chilled season for venison next year is going to be a lot better than the chilled season last year. So I'm optimistic on that point. Mark's absolutely right. The rate of change is here and around us, and it's happening. We need to find ways of adapting to that because that's universal across all of us, really. And we just during the next year, we have got Passion to Profit. The P2P brand is really strong now, and we're looking to how do we springboard that into something we can really grow even more over the next few years. So we're going to be running some consultation with farmers and all the stakeholders as to how we can really strengthen that brand and bring even more farmers in, but also deepen the topics and the areas we talked about as well. So really lots happening and good positive stuff from my point of view.
Mark, from your point of view?
And just to add to what Phil just said there, a lot of what's being done behind the scenes to support farmers is going to be invaluable. As I mentioned before, a lot of farmers joined or started their farming careers for love of the land and the animals, and now there's a whole lot of different requirements that they don't have an understanding of. So the support of those programs to help them through it will be critical.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking the time to be on our Opinion Maker panel today. Deer Farmer Association Executive Committee member Mark McCoard and Deer Industry New Zealand's Environment Project Manager Phil McKenzie.